Okay, the Advanced Information Booklet for Paper 3, GCSE 2018. First part of Figure 1, background information. First about supply, and you can see here a classic choropleth map, where the density of colour indicates the scale of the data of rainfall in the United Kingdom. And you can see we have a western regime where lots of our rain falls on the west, not much on the east. Why does it fall on the west? Two factors. One, most of our weather comes from off the Atlantic, comes from the west. And when it hits the western side, it then finds mountains. It's where our highlands are. Air is forced to rise, and as it rises, it cools. As it cools, it begins to lose its ability to hold water as vapor. Condensation occurs, precipitation may then fall, down comes the rain and washed out all the spiders and all that rubbish. As the air then descends, though, going across the country, it warms up. So it's actually more likely to be able to hold more water, vapor, less likely to give clouds, therefore less rainfall. The second factor is the fact that we've got a lovely warm ocean current off the coast of the UK called the North Atlantic Drift. It's not called the Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream is way over in the Atlantic. Once it crosses the Atlantic, it's called the North Atlantic Drift. That means that air blowing over that water, warm water, will warm up and absorb a lot more humidity. So the air coming to the UK from the west is already laden with loads of water vapor, just ready to drop that water. Bear in mind that 2,600 and more, that's more than the Amazon rainforest receives in most places. So really high levels of water. The problem, though, if you drop down to the second diagram, of course, is that most of our demand is either for agricultural products, which are grown in the East Anglian region, and we're talking about wheat, barley, and vegetable crops and things like that that need water, they're very thirsty. And in the southeast, where we've got the major conurbation around London. There are, of course, cities in the wet area, so to speak, like Liverpool, and Manchester is synonymous with lots and lots of rainfall. And of course, Wales is wet and, well, miserable. So in terms of future growth, remember that your extreme UK climate, talking about the impacts of climate change, one of those for the UK, we believe, is going to be a change in our weather. We don't quite know yet. Many people think it'll be more storms. Many people think that there could be warmer summers. What's the overall impact? All we can look at is the demand side change, not the supply, the rainfall change. And you've got a couple of things here. Leakage, they hope will be able to fall because there's big investment, because the government's made the water companies reduce the amount of water just lost from the system. Non-household demand is expected to increase dramatically, mainly due to a need for irrigation in crops to feed the people of the country. And then household demand is expected to go from a current 164 litres to 180. Think about that, 180 litres of water per person per day. That's an incredible amount of water. And if we're down in the southeast, it's not falling locally and being caught in large local reservoirs. It's got to come from somewhere. So already we've had, since the Victorian times, water transfer schemes. We've had water going from mid-Wales to Birmingham for a very, very long time. And in fact, the water companies of Birmingham built the reservoirs by damming valleys in these very, very steep mountainous areas. And that happens in other places as well, the black lines. The reds are the proposed schemes to try to reduce the serious, use the language of the work. Remember, lifting. Lifting means taking from the resource absolutely verbatim, exactly. So use the word serious water stress. Just say, there's water stress. There's serious water stress. So one of the proposed solutions is down here in South Oxfordshire, near where we are, in fact, and this is aimed to try to alleviate the serious water stress, probably not for agriculture in the east, but for the urban water stress, and you can read about those schemes. Figure 2 now drops down to look at the proposal for a new reservoir just south of Abingdon, just south of Marcham, which will be a reservoir not like the Victorians built in Wales with big dams across valleys, but actually a big earthen bank, and you've got the details of the lift there, and the earthen bank will be trapping water which will be coming to that area, and they reckon that they'll be able to store about 150 billion litres of water, okay, which will be coming from the plumbing that's going to happen in other places, probably in steps. The water then will be going into the River Thames, where it will be abstracted. If you can use the word abstracted, you're a really good person. Taken out. How? By a tunnel. And you've got the details of the scheme. Here is an interesting map for me, because I think there's something going to be done with this map. It just doesn't feel complete. But what you can see on here is the blue line network, the network of major rivers that could be used to transfer the water from the proposed reservoir down and into London. And you can see the Kennet, the Thames, and the Cherwell. Figure 2 continues to the second part. Now, this map down here, this OS map, is gagging for something to be done. I'm going to put my house on the fact they're going to ask you to try and figure out the area of the proposed dam, because the area of the proposed reservoir, because the area is not mentioned in anywhere else in the figure, and yet they've drawn this black line, which kind of is quite straightforward to be able to work out the area. Work it out. I think somebody said 5.5, but you do it yourself. Kilometers per kilometer squared. Remember your units. So that all in here, you've got the background as to why Thames Water is going to be putting things in place. Remember, Thames Water has to report to the Environment Agency, and the Environment Agency is the government agency, and they have to provide a 25-year plan. Notice the local rainfall is only about 737 millimetres. Just know where the figures are. Don't learn the figures, but know that you can lift. The best answers in these exams have got good integration of lifted facts, and that's your job really, is to make sure you know where to go for it. So what happens on figure 3 is the case of the new reservoir. So you can see that what Thames Water is proposing out here is why they need a new reservoir. If no action is taken, Oxford will be left with a shortage of water of 1 million litres of water per day by 2020. That's pressing. That's really pressing, because to build the banks, build the tunnels, build the transfer schemes, really important. It does say then that reducing demand, water leakage, and encouraging people to use less water will not solve the problem. And they've made the case for having a new reservoir. Worth having a look at this. This is the essential background as to how over a 2-year period the demand for water is rising so much, because the temperature, of course, is very, very high. We think the temperatures are going to get higher. We've had very, very warm summers, and warm summers leading to greater evaporation, evapotranspiration, water loss before it even gets into the system. Here's an existing reservoir, Farmore Reservoir, built in 1967, as an illustration of what can happen. Remember your SHEEP factors. SHEEP, social impacts, historical change, economic impacts, environmental impacts, and the politics. SHEEP words, those 5 words, particularly drop the historical if you want to, but social, economic, environmental, and political, those words examiners see in your answers. So try, if you're asked to answer question stage, what are the issues? Really make it obvious to talk about the economic impacts will be, try and go positive and negative. The environmental impacts will be positive and negative. The political issue is obviously local scale voters who are going to lose their lovely dog walking area versus a national scale need because of the serious water stress. But do remember to try to use the framework of SHEEP factors, but drop the H if you need to. There will, of course, be economic opportunities, and it's mentioned down here. What happens at Farmore? Walking, so non-consumptive use, walking around a lovely lake, being able to watch the birds. Environmental, increasing habitats, and they will manage habitats. Thames Water, in their proposal, do include a proposal to improve the ecosystems in the area. And then you've got leisure and recreation. You've got your windsurfing, you've got possibly your fishing. Some reservoirs, they don't allow people to go onto them, mainly because the water cleanup technology in those at the end of the old reservoirs, when the water came out of the reservoir, was not strong enough to deal with it. There's no evidence that that will happen here. In fact, they are playing on the environmental positive and the economic positive. So just be aware of that tension. That's where the higher level questions will come. And of course, one of the questions you can guarantee will be justify. What's your view? State your case. Yes, I think it should be built. These are the reasons for. Just discuss and justify, requiring to throw pros and cons in. Remember to frame them in the economic benefits, the economic bad points, the environmental, etc. Remember, during the environmental, it's the construction phase and then the phase when it's in place. And you might want to separate those out as well. Because the key to these exams is having a framework in your mind so that when you walk in, you know when you see the question, what is the framework I want to populate with the good words and the lifts from the advanced information booklet. So who's against it? Well, GARD, the group against reservoir development, fantastic. And they've listed 5 bullet points that they don't like. Just remember where they are, probably highlight in your copy 1 or 2 words. So destroy habitats, visually intrusive means it doesn't look very nice. I like a good reservoir myself, but there we go. Not everyone's cup of tea. Disruption during the building phase, just mentioned that. Possible risk of flooding, because of course if the reservoir has a finite capacity, so if suddenly there's more water going in, they've got to let the water out, and that goes into the river system. Water conservation and the local views. Fantastic. It should be a good exam and easy to do. Good luck, young Jedi.